Hi, and welcome to Enriched Perspective with Mike and Talisha Wallace, where we seek to shift paradigms through the exploration of biblical principles. I'm Mike.
And I'm Talisha. Welcome to the podcast. So today we're talking about the S word. Okay, so that's an interesting topic. So Michael, what is the S word we're talking about today?
So the S word that we're talking about today is a word that starts with an S that most people do not like to hear.
Sounds like a bad word.
Depends on who you're talking to. Depends on the context. It can be perceived as a bad word.
Yeah, because we don't cuss around here, so.
We don't cuss, but it might feel like you're cussing when you say this word.
Okay. So, what's the word?
The word is submit.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Submit.
That word, that S word, that particular S word. Stay with us now. Don't leave yet. Don't go nowhere. We're going somewhere with this.
Shortest podcast ever.
Maybe. But the word submit is a word that a lot of people view as a bad word.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's because it's used improperly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people really abuse that word for their personal advantages. And it's something that because it has been used so wrongly over time that it does have a very negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
Like just when you hear the word submit, it's like, yeah, I ain't listening to this mess.
Oh, yeah.
Because most people think that when you hear that word, like, okay, you want me to just obey you and be mindless and just do whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that is completely contrary to how people operate today and how people want to operate as well.
Yeah. When we were doing a study on this topic, I ran across the point that I want to share. And it says, submission is a concept that seems to go against the grain of human nature, and yet we all see the need for it in certain aspects of life. Without submission, things quickly fall into chaos as everyone strives to be in charge. Even though it is sometimes mocked as a sign of weakness, submission is really one of the strongest pillars of a stable society. That really does go against the grain when you think about it.
Absolutely. Again, that's just one of those things that because of how we've been conditioned to view and to understand that word, we just struggle with it.
Yeah.
So there's a definition, of course, for the word. Submit in and of itself is a verb. And the definitions that we're dealing with is to give over or yield to the power or authority of another or to subject to some kind of treatment or influence.
Mm-hmm.
And that is kind of the baseline of the other word we hear, which is submission.
Yeah.
And submission is an act or instance of submitting or yielding control to a more powerful or authoritative entity.
Mm-hmm.
The act or condition of submitting something for consideration, approval, treatment, or action. When we say submission, of course, it's that giving over power or giving over control to someone or something that is more powerful or has more authority than we do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it sounds like the S word when you start saying those things, because quite frankly, nobody wants to give up power.
Yeah.
If anything, we want to accumulate power.
Yeah.
Nobody definitely wants to submit to any kind of authority because we want to be in charge.
Right. The thing that I noticed is like that you give over or you yield, like you voluntarily give it up. It's not just taken from you. So there's a different view on that.
Yeah, but most people feel like it's taken from them. It's involuntary, not voluntary. It's like, I have to do this.
Yeah.
So therefore, it again sounds like a bad word. It sounds like profanity in our ears. Submit. Who in the world you think you talking to?
Oh, yeah.
Telling me to submit, be submissive. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You need to submit.
Like
and you get into this whole argument and stuff. But anyways.
Like it's a weakness, but it's actually not. Once we get into it, you'll see like, oh, it's not so intimidating after all.
No, and to your point earlier, it actually is something that is liberating, and it's something that can actually cause you to operate with greater power.
Right.
So where do you want to start with this? Where do you really want to go?
So I guess when we're talking about submitting, like who to who and to what? Which I guess you already said, like something higher, a higher power, or someone in authority. So we're, of course, automatically go to God, or most people think husbands. When you say submissive, they just think submissive wives. So to a
Yep.
man, you know, that or kids or anyone over them. But usually when we hear submissive, we usually go to just the marriage relationship. But there's other areas where we all, men and women, boys and girls, have to submit or should submit or want to submit to someone over them.
Absolutely.
So who or where are we asked to do it?
Okay. So the first place we're asked to do it is, of course, to God.
Yeah.
And then the next place, and it's kind of very broad and all-encompassing, is God-ordained authority. And that can include familial order. That means like husbands, wives, children, that whole structure. Natural and spiritual leaders, whether it be your employers or whether it be, people that have, that rule over you, so to speak, in the workplace or otherwise. Spiritual leaders, of course, those that are in the church, and then the government as well.
Oh, yeah.
So those are the ones that definitely you can find in the Bible where it talks about submitting to those particular ordained authorities.
Yeah.
And, of course, first and foremost to God.
Yeah. So to that point, I found another statement that says submission to God's authority brings freedom. It sets order and direction in our everyday lives for those found in Christ. And what is to follow is unimaginable blessing for those who are obedient. I think there's missing a word there, but
they're missing a word.
It seems like really it's not there. I'm reading it. It doesn't say.
Okay.
Well, I would say and what is to follow is an unimaginable blessing for those who are obedient. So the whole point of the thing is submitting to God brings freedom. It's not a bad. It doesn't limit you. It's actually a freeing thing.
Yes.
So yeah, just want to throw that out there.
And the one scripture that comes to mind is James 4:7. Very simply says, "Submit yourselves therefore to God." And it also says, "Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." So, of course, that is the first person. That's the first authority. That's the first power that we should be submitting ourselves to is to God. And if we submit ourselves to Him, then I'm not going to say it's easy, but it should be easier to do the other things, which He's asking us to do.
Yeah.
To your point, like submitting to God is at times just as challenging as it is to submit to others or submit to individuals, because again, it's laying aside your will, laying aside your desires, laying aside your aspirations, so to speak, in favor of His, and really saying, nevertheless, or in spite of what I desire, what I want, I'm putting it all in your hands, and I'm trusting you to lead the way.
Yeah.
And that statement right there is very challenging for people. That's why so many people struggle with conversion in and of itself, but even after conversion, struggle in living a full and a fully committed and dedicated life for Christ. It's because we have difficulty submitting. Yeah. Because of how it's been framed in our minds. Like I say, that giving up of control is just something that we have great difficulty with.
Yeah. Sounds like there's some trust issues. To submit to someone, you have to really fully trust them, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another point, just a question. Is submission important in relationships, like you were saying, us yielding one to another? Being submissive helps us to be less self-centered and allows us to consider the desires of others. Submission has nothing to do with being weak, but allows us to be strong enough to open our hearts to others. Submission leads to equality, fairness, and trust. My reading is off today, but just being fair and trust. We all kind of, you don't feel one better than the other. Even you submitting one to another, it's a good thing. It's less self-centered.
Yeah. So the Bible.
I mean, just consider when we just submit like one to another. So you can't be self-centered if you're doing that. If you're submitting one to another.
Yeah.
That's the point, right?
Okay.
So I don't know why you looking at me like that.
Like what?
I don't know.
Me neither. Just wait for you to get your point across.
That was it. I just couldn't read it out too good, but I think
All
you
right.
understand what I'm trying to say.
So Ephesians 5:21 is the scripture that you're referencing. And very simply, it says, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. And it's kind of funny, like these scriptures that really talk about submission, they're very short.
Oh yeah.
They're not long and drawn out, not a lot of detail, but it just say submit.
Yeah.
And then again, 5:21, Ephesians says, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. And to your point, yep, it does create a certain amount of equality when we're submitting to one another, as opposed to one side feel like they're always the one having to give, having to yield, having to give up. First Peter also talks about it in the 5th chapter, in the 5th verse. He said, yea, all of you be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility.
There it is.
For God resists the proud and giveth grace to the humble. So, of course, that is a key tenet of the submitting one to another. We have to be humble. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, and it ain't going to work, because you're going to say something that I don't like or I don't agree with, or because I don't have full confidence in what you're saying, and because, or I just think I got a better way. I just think I know more than you do. Not that I do or don't. It's just I think I do, because I'm proud of my, I know what I know, and we get in our feelings, and we don't want nobody telling us nothing. So when it's my turn to be submitted to, I'm good. I'm Gucci.
Oh,
but
Lord.
when it's my turn to submit, it's like, it just rub me weird.
Yeah.
Philippians 2:3 helps us out. He said, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem the other better than themselves. Again, this whole posture of humility as it relates to submission is so critical. And this is just talking submitting one to another.
Right.
Of course, when you're talking about submitting to God, going back to the top end, you definitely have to have humility. Understanding that God knows everything. He is the greatest power. He is the power. He is the all-seeing, all-knowing, almighty God, and whatever he has designed for us is perfect.
Right.
And it takes a bit of humility to step back from what I want, what I desire, and again, yield that into his hands. Now moving down a notch, moving to man and each other, it takes a lot of humility to back off of what I think is correct or what I think is right in favor of, being submissive or showing humility, one towards another.
Yeah. So another point, hopefully I can read this one right. So it says, is humility and submission the same? And then it answers the question, as humility is the opposite of pride, submission is the moral opposite of selfish ambition. To submit literally means to order oneself under, meaning to willfully put ourselves under the leadership and authority of another.
Wives!
Okay. Here we go. We should have known we was coming down to this one, right?
Submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fit in the Lord. That is actual scripture.
Where you find that at?
Colossians 3:18.
Okay. I found one in Ephesians.
Yep, 5:22. It also says, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. So one says, as it is fit in the Lord, and one other one says, as unto the Lord.
Wow.
But in both cases, it still says, wives, submit yourselves. Now, here's the thing. To your own husbands. I mean, you find, I'm going to go sidebar here, find women that are so submissive to everybody else's husbands. And they so nice and malleable and humble in the spirit and, so agreeable. Get to their own husband. I ain't doing nothing. You say,
you ain't my daddy.
Right. It's like, oh, that'd be nasty. I wouldn't be your daddy. It's gross.
Okay.
But they go into this whole diatribe of why they shouldn't submit themselves to their own husbands, or why it's not fit, or why it's not meet, or why it's not even necessary for them to submit themselves to their own husbands. And unfortunately for you outside of the word of God.
Oh boy.
Like you said, this is something that you voluntarily put yourself into.
Yeah.
this is the covenant, the marital covenant
Mm-hmm.
that you voluntarily accepted.
Yeah.
And according to God's ordinance and his authority, the husband is the head of the wife. He's the head of the household. And whether you like it or not, it is what it is. We're going to get to it. We're going to
Yeah,
make you
because
feel
I'm
better.
like, wait a minute. Ooh.
Go,
Okay, so let me put this in there.
go ahead, go ahead.
It's just part of it. Says submission looks like respecting your husband's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
It means humbly sharing your opinion with him. It means not invalidating him, especially in front of others, since we know people be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It means trusting his decision as a leader while feeling empowered to give your own point of view. So it's not like what you think it is and what people assume a submissive wife is supposed to be like.
What,
Um,
quiet and don't say nothing and just do
yeah.
anything I tell you to do whenever I tell
Mhm.
you to do it, how I tell you to do it.
Right.
Don't ever question me because
Mhm.
I'm all seeing and I'm knowing. You're not
Right.
God.
Not
Let's just stop there.
just turning your brain off. Like
Right.
whatever you say. You have no thoughts. You're no
Whatever you
longer a
like.
person. Okay. Coming to
Whatever
America,
you
whatever you like. But yeah. So.
And that is true, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But definitely, that's one of the words or the points of submission that you hear quite a bit
Yeah.
in a lot of different circles. And again, it's one that's challenging because there are some things that we'll get to, criteria
Yeah.
that needs to be met that just isn't a lot of times as it relates to the husband's responsibilities as well as the wives. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
So moving along, talks about, of course, submitting to those that have rule over you, what we call like spiritual and also natural leaders.
Mm-hmm.
In Hebrews 13 and 17, it talks about obey them that have the rule over you and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls as they that must give account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable for you.
Right.
And again, that's another one of them areas where you see nowadays it's a significant challenge
Yeah.
with people submitting themselves to the spiritual authority
Mm-hmm.
of pastors and elders and bishops and overseers, whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
elders, whether they be male or female in the church.
Mm-hmm.
1 Peter 5 and 5 says, likewise, you younger,
Yes.
submit yourselves unto the elder.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, yea, all of you be subject one to another. And again, here it goes again. And be clothed with humility.
There it is.
For God resists the proud
Mm-hmm.
and giveth grace unto the humble.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that same subject matter,
Yes.
but it's talking in regards to the young people or the younger ones. And elders in this case are the elders of the church,
Mm-hmm.
the overseers and the ones that are in charge or in authority.
Right.
They're telling the young to submit themselves to them,
Mm-hmm.
and again, not give them grief, because sometimes being young, being ambitious, being zealous, you feel like you know everything and you
Mhm.
have all these great, bright, and brilliant ideas. And sometimes it may seem like the elders are moving a little bit slow for you, or they're out of step, or they're not quite up to the new things.
Yeah.
And we overstep
Yeah.
and we try to take over. And we think, well, it's because I'm trying to do it for the sake of, God, or whatever the case may be. Whatever your initiative or whatever your motivation may be, it's still wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we definitely have to continue to, with humility, bring forth the ideas, with humility, make the
Right.
suggestions, with humility, submit to the direction that they're providing,
Right.
even if you don't always agree.
Yeah.
But that's where the humility comes in, and trusting their experience, trusting their character, trusting their wisdom, that they
Mhm.
do know what's best, even though they might not be able to use the latest and greatest methods.
Mm-hmm.
They still understand and know what's best, and that should be the most important thing.
Absolutely.
1 Corinthians 16:16 also speaks of those things, saying that ye submit yourselves unto such, and to everyone that helpeth with us and laboreth. And again, Paul was talking about those that were laboring in the gospel with him,
Right.
to the Corinthian church. Moving down, we're going to leave that alone for now. We'll get back to all of this. Again, I know it sounds like the S word. It still sounds like the one that's not so pleasant. We'll move down a little bit and hopefully give you a little bit more rich perspective as we go. But
Mhm.
the last one we want to cover really quickly was submitting yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake.
Mhm.
This is actually in 1 Peter 2 and 13.
Right.
And sometimes we don't feel like we have to obey, the laws of the land and the authority that God has placed to take care of us, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
police officers or whether it be the judges or the ruler
Mm-hmm.
supreme.
Yep.
We're supposed to give them honor just like we do everybody else.
That's
It even
right.
says that. It says whether it be the king as supreme, you're supposed to submit yourself to him and honor him, or whether it be governors or to them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, for
Mm-hmm.
all the praise of them that do, or for all the praise of them that do well. This is necessary for us as well to make sure that we are submitting ourselves to the authority that is placed over us as
Right.
it relates to governments.
Right.
Now, in all these different things, there's one that trumps everything. So in every single case, no matter whether it's submitting to one another, submitting to wives submitting to husbands, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
children to parents, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's us to the elders and leaders, whether it be in the church space or whether it be authority, in a natural space,
Mm-hmm.
they all still have to submit to God.
That's right.
And if they're not submitted or what they're doing is not in a manner that's submitted to God, then you can say, well, I believe I'd rather obey God than man.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to do anything
Mm-hmm.
that's going to cause me to be in error
Right.
or to be out of right relationship with God
Right.
for the sake of following these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part we always have to keep in mind. Like you look at the apostles,
Mm-hmm.
they were going through some things and they were told directly by leaders, by rulers, by elders, by
Mm-hmm.
the Sadducees, Pharisees,
Right.
don't you go and preach in this name. And they said, well, we got a problem. We got
Yeah.
an impasse because
Yeah.
God told me to do this, and I'm going to submit to the will of God
Right.
first and foremost.
Right.
Talk about husbands and wives. He said, as it is fit in the
In
Lord.
the Lord.
If you tell me to do something outside of God, I'm not obligated to follow that
Right.
leadership and authority. Parents and
Mm-mm.
children.
That's
We're
right.
talking about leaders, whether it be in the spiritual or church or whether it be in the natural. If you're asking me to do something that's contrary to the word of God, I'm not obligated to follow that authority
Exactly.
because I got to answer to God first.
Right. And all authority comes from God.
Absolutely.
So we are commanded to submit to him. So that's something, like you say, he comes first.
And there are abusers
Oh, yeah.
of this authority. I wrote really quickly, and now we're finna switch gears a little bit. It says submission does not come without sacrifice, responsibility, and accountability. We tend to focus on submission only from the perspective of the person that is expected to submit,
Mm-hmm.
or what I call the submitter. We need to think more deeply about what's required or expected of the ones that they're submitting to, which is
Mhm.
the authority.
Right.
More often than not, we always telling somebody else they need to submit.
Right.
And it seems like that particular conversation gets louder and we're way more vocal and we're way more forceful when we're the one in charge.
Of course.
We're the one that's in authority. You need to submit. You need to be obedient.
Mm-hmm.
Blah, blah, blah. But when it's not you, you have a completely different take on the subject. I mean, you kind of mousy about it. You right with the rest of us complaining about
Mhm.
the decisions that's being made, the things that are being asked of us to do, or told rather of us to do. Because again, it's easy
Yeah.
because you feel empowered. You feel like now it's my turn. It's my time to shine. But in all reality, being the authority, you have a greater responsibility to
That's
me
right.
when it comes down to submission.
That's right.
Doing what you're told, yeah, that's just being obedient.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yeah.
don't have to. There's not a lot of investment in obedience.
No.
Truthfully,
No.
as much as people like to say, "Well, being obedient, I can do what you tell me to do," but that don't mean I agree with you, or that
Yeah.
don't mean that I internalize it, or I'm really,
Oh, yeah. Like,
really taking it to heart. I'm just doing what you tell me to do in the moment. The minute I
Yeah.
get an opportunity, I'm do something different.
exactly. Or
Because-
stop doing it altogether.
Exactly. But when you're submitting to something or to someone, it's like you're putting your life into
Mhm.
their hands and you're trusting them
Mhm.
with your life, your
Yep.
future, your present, and that's a very sacred, and that's a very sensitive thing.
Mhm.
And when you look at the Bible, yeah, it's a lot that talks about that person that you're giving this responsibility to, or you're yielding this authority and this power and control to.
Mhm.
The Bible got a lot to say about how they need to be.
Yeah.
You never really hear about it, but
It's there.
it's there. When you talk about, just as an example, just to kind of back up what I'm saying,
Mhm.
like with Jesus, when he was trying to pray, he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane,
Mm-hmm.
And he
Yep.
was like, if it was possible, please let this cup pass from me. But he
Mm-hmm.
said, not, nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. And he kept praying and kept travailing. And
Yep.
eventually he realized it wasn't going to pass because he understood what needed to happen and why it needed to happen. He said, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done.
Right.
In other words, regardless of how it was going to affect me, regardless of the impact, because I know that you know what's best, I'm submitting
Yes.
my everything to you,
Right.
my
That's
life, even
yes.
to the point where I'm willing to give up my life for you if this is what your will is for me. And the
Mm-hmm.
apostles follow suit
Yeah.
all throughout the Bible. They gave up their lives for the sake of the gospel.
Yeah.
And again, he ain't really asking you to do it like that to some degree,
Mm.
but he's also asking you to.
Yeah.
Because from the standpoint of Christ, you really do have to lay down your life
Yeah.
for him.
Right.
And in doing so, you're submitting yourself to him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have the challenge.
Right.
Now, the reason why we have the challenge, of course, is because sometimes, or a lot of times, when we talk about this word, this S word,
Mm-hmm.
is from a point of pride from somebody.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Usually, it's a lot of selfish motivations behind it. The person that's enforcing or trying to push for your submission doesn't feel like a lot of love or compassion is integrated into that. It feels very cold and very militant. And a lot of times it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to trust, the person, because again, I don't know what your motives are. I don't know what your intentions are. You ain't really done nothing for me. You ain't
Mm-hmm.
really, helped me change my state of mind about how I feel about you. Don't really respect you,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you want me to submit to you.
Yeah.
You haven't really earned my trust, but yet you want me to submit to you.
Yeah.
Then there's not a lot of relationship there either because it's
Right.
just transactional.
Right.
Just do what, like you were saying, a lot of men, just do what I say
Mm-hmm.
and don't ask no questions. And I just know everything because I'm the man.
Yeah.
That's the most foolish way to go into a relationship. If I ever heard one,
Yeah.
yes, that is extremely foolish. And that's a great way to destroy
Mm-hmm.
a marital relationship.
Oh yeah.
If that's how you view things.
Yeah.
And of course, there's no safety because you're not looking out for me. You're just looking out for your best interest. You're
Yeah.
trying to get the most you can out of me
Right.
in the context of me having to be the submitter to you, the authority.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what drives people away from this word and from this conversation.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like there's really any advantages for me as the submitter.
Right.
I just get to put upon. I get, everything just thrown on top of me and
Yeah.
I have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And again, and then it's still my fault if things don't work out. Some kind of
Yeah.
way it's my fault. Ain't got nothing to do with you. You ain't do nothing wrong because
Yeah.
you know everything. You're right all the time. You're the authority.
Right.
So no way you could be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Happens all the time though.
Sorry, that's my 2-minute rant. So with that, what we're trying to I was looking at, and just some of the things that I saw as you start talking about submission. First of all, there has to be an environment that facilitates submission.
Right. Exactly.
And this environment requires, first and foremost, like we mentioned a multitude of times, humility.
Yes.
Has to be an environment where there is love.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be selflessness,
Yes.
compassion, trust. There has to be some form of integrity that has been demonstrated by the
Mhm.
authority.
Right.
Definitely there has to be some respect there.
Right.
There has to be a feeling and an environment that supports and makes you feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be relationship.
Yeah. That's something that's a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's earned.
And all of those things are the responsibility of the authority.
Right.
Now, the submitter is the one that's able to take advantage of these things, and that's why they're able to yield
Mm-hmm.
their power because they have all
Yeah.
these things that's working for them, that's helping them feel safe and secure. They
Mhm.
feel heard. They feel respected.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like you're going to operate with integrity. You do love them. You have their best interest at heart. You have humility. You're not lifted up in pride and just going to do something stupid because you said you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And you don't want nobody to question you, so you're going to do it
Yeah.
anyway, even though it's going to cause us harm.
Right.
And you're selfless.
Yeah.
So you're not looking out for your own, but you're looking out for the welfare and the well-being of everybody that you are responsible to and for.
Yeah, I just think when those two are working together, when you have you have it right, when you're submitting,
Mm-hmm.
the submitter and the one being submitted to, and the one that's submitted, and that's working on all cylinders. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That's the authority is the submitted to
Oh,
person.
what I say?
The submitted to person.
Well, you know, yeah.
So,
Okay.
I'll just very quickly say, is the responsibility of the one in authority, again, to create and foster an environment in which the submitter can submit.
Mm-hmm.
All in all, submission is something, to your point, that is truly is earned.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we think because we said I do,
Yeah.
you're going to submit to me. It's like,
Like,
you know, oh, okay.
but that I think it starts off as just going through the motions of obedience.
Yeah.
But as you build the relationship and you show those
Mm-hmm.
attributes of not being selfless and you really want the best for our lives and our futures, and that person is like, oh, okay.
I'll be honest, you'd be lucky if you get obedience. At the first
Oh,
part, come on
I
now.
mean,
Come on now.
I'm,
Let's keep it real. Let's keep it
well,
100.
well, you know that scripture in First Peter.
Yeah, I know
They
what it say,
they
but I
talk
know what
about.
people do too.
Well, I mean, if the relationship is there
Uh huh.
and it's budding and
Uh
growing
huh.
and showing signs,
That's year 5 or 4
I mean,
or
it
3.
should get easier to trust and submit to each other.
It should.
But we know there is order. God does have an order in the household,
Yes, he does.
and the husband is the head. I know people don't want to hear it, but that's biblical.
You are correct.
So there's responsibility on the head of the household and the other, everyone underneath the person.
Absolutely.
So everybody got to be working towards.
I hear you.
So you don't think that it can happen within? You said 5 years.
I was just saying it don't happen after the 6
Like,
to 9 months and you say
well,
I do.
Well, you might start off like, okay, because I know this what is expected, you know. So I don't
No.
want to.
No. No. Come on now. Let's be real.
I'm just saying.
I mean, after you get past the good feelings, after you get out of your emotional, and all of the euphoria, you get down to the realities of things. That first decision, you already got to fight. How you fighting on your honeymoon? Like,
Well, that just depends on the person, though.
oh, I agree, but I'm just saying, it's just one of those things where it don't always happens just
Because
immediately and right after you say I do or after you make the vows. Because most people, first of all, let's just be real, when they get married, they ain't really thinking about that part. They thinking
well,
about the submission part. They're thinking about, oh, I love him. He makes me feel
but
good.
that's
She pleases me.
but why can't you just keep that? Why does it have to switch all of a sudden to something else?
It doesn't. But when you start getting into conversations and you start having to make decisions and when you start having disagreements,
Oh,
and now you have to step into your authority,
okay.
that's when you start having a problem. Because a lot of times, first, I'm talking about men. Men don't know how to properly step into their authority. So a lot of times they come in hot, Oh, you get mad or, you get upset, you get frustrated. So you take it out and you lash out and you try to just brute force it.
Mm-hmm.
And come on now, you've been a woman for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. Brute forcing it don't work. Because all that'll do is make y'all shut down. If we lucky, you shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is more you gonna ramp up. It's like, oh, you want to go, and both of y'all coming in hot, and now y'all get into this intense argument. Nothing's been resolved,
Mm-hmm.
and now y'all both looking weird.
Well, that's just you just had a bad day.
That lasted like 7 Because again, while we love the concept of marriage, we love the relational part when it comes down to the feelings of love and adoration and euphoria and
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes down to the realities of marriage, that does require, to your point, submission. Neither side knows what they're doing a lot of times.
Mm.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not putting it on the submitter, the wife, as being the problem person. I'm talking about the one that's supposed to be responsible, the husband.
So you're saying if the one that is in authority, if they have it together, it makes it a lot more.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the one that's in authority, which in this particular case of husband and wife, if he is doing what God told him to do, which is love your wives even as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. And then it went on and said, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. It says, it says you're supposed to nourish and cherish them, even
Mm-hmm.
as the Lord the church. He said, don't be bitter against them. That's Colossians 3:19. The first
Mm-hmm.
one was in Ephesians 5:25, 28, and 29. In 1 Peter 3:7, it talks about dwell with them according to knowledge. Give honor to your wife as unto the weaker vessel.
Mm-hmm.
If we do these things as the one in authority, then over time, they can't help but submit to your authority.
Yes. Okay, I see that.
But the problem we have is a lot of times, I'm talking about us, men, we're not doing these things.
Mm.
We're not doing all these things that creates this environment. We're not
Mm-hmm.
operating with humility. We all kinds of pride because we trying to make our mark and we trying to,
Yeah.
demonstrate that we know what we doing and we got it under control and we know how to handle our business. And we doing some stupid stuff.
Wow.
And we acting real ignorant and real
Yeah.
mannish in a bad way.
And they come in knowing that they have that authority,
Well,
and they
assuming that they
abuse
have the
it.
authority.
Well, I mean, if you come through certain church environments, you've
Uh-huh.
been told that.
And
And-
again, you're assuming you have that authority because you think she gonna listen to you, and you get a whole rude awakening when she come snap back at you, just like you snapping at her, because
Well-
you thought she was all meek and calm and humble and lowly, and just such a mild mannered individual, but you ain't hit the right button.
Well,
I'm just saying.
there might be some that just whatever you say, dear. Yes, honey.
Uh-huh.
But
Them the ones that cut you in the middle of the night.
but I think it stunts the relationship with the hot grits.
Right.
I think it stunts the relationship because if she never turns her brain on, she never speaks her mind and never gets that chance, and she just okay, whatever you say. I don't think that relationship is really full.
No, it can't be
You know?
because it's not to me. Again, for me, I can't, I couldn't imagine having somebody that's supposed to be my partner, and I got to
Yeah.
do all the thinking for everybody involved. If you're going to be my helpmeet, that means you got to be bringing something to the table.
But they got to be open to. But there's some people that just are. They like that. They like being.
I
You
get
know.
that. Like being what?
In control and not.
Yeah, but that's not how we're supposed to be.
No,
biblically.
I ain't saying it's okay, but I just know that it's happening.
Yeah, and you might find somebody that's willing to allow that. They might submit to that type of authority, and that's fine if that's what you got. But the thing about it is you have to dwell with the person that you're with according to knowledge.
Okay.
So if you have someone that maybe does like to be led more, then you dwell with them with that understanding. Like she doesn't like to make certain types of decisions. She prefer if I make those decisions, but we have that understanding. We have that agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And she's more than happy to submit to that. But you might have somebody who's a very whole, independent, proud, black
Yeah.
girl rock, whatever,
Yeah.
and you trying to treat her like that, you're going to get a
no.
problem.
Oh no.
Because she's
Yeah.
not going to submit to that type of leadership.
Yeah, those women get labeled certain like
Yeah.
domineering, stubborn,
but
disobedient kind of.
But the husband was ignorant from the standpoint that he didn't learn who he was dealing with.
Yeah.
And he didn't adjust his methods because he still has a responsibility to lead the household. He still has a responsibility to be the head of household.
Mm-hmm.
But that might look different in that particular context.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to take a context that maybe not fit for what you're dealing with and apply it there, you're going to be in trouble.
True.
And that's why you have to dwell with them according to knowledge. You have to take the time to get to know your companion. You have to be willing to listen to them, hear them out, let them walk through whatever it is they're trying to walk through, and really seek to understand. Ask questions so you can understand, not just so you can respond.
Yeah.
And women have to do the same thing.
Right.
Because sometimes your husband might not be as quick as you, but that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be due the proper respect that he's due as your husband.
Right. And I like that it even says dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife. So you're not really being abusive or when I say abusive, I mean like just really wrought iron, my way, only way. Just I don't care what you don't ask questions, that kind of abusive authority type of thing.
Right.
But he's given her, like you say, opportunity to speak. This is what I want. What do you think? Let's come to a decision together. And if there's an executive decision that needs to be made, don't worry about it. I'm gonna cover you as a head of household. Make sure you're good. I'm gonna make the executive decision.
Yeah.
So
And then you also have processes in place and rules in place,
yeah,
boundaries, so that you'll know how to make that executive decision in a way that works for your family.
right.
For some people, it's fine. Like, okay, babe, you make the final decision,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll just deal with it. And it is what it is. In some
Yeah.
cases, like say you have a different type of woman, you might be like, well, let's just sit on that until we come to an agreement. If
Mm-hmm.
we can't come to an agreement, then we're not going to make a decision
Yeah.
until we figure out how we're going to work this. We're not going to move. And that's what the authority is responsible for, is setting that order in the house, making sure that there is a proper precedent for how to operate, how to move forward, how to make sure everybody is heard, how to make sure everybody is respected, feels respected, how they feel heard, they feel
Mm-hmm.
important, they feel loved. They feel like they can trust your decision making because they're not excluded from the decision making process. And
Yes.
that's stuff you have to work on.
Mm-hmm.
That's stuff you have to continually strive to build as the authority.
Right.
Now, you can go, like, say, we've been talking about husband and wife for a minute,
Yeah.
but you can go into any space and kind of
Mm-hmm.
talk on those terms. So you talk about spiritual leaders.
Yeah.
If you look at the different requirements, I mean, you look at 1 Peter 5, 1-3,
Mm-hmm.
talking about the elders. You look also at, where am I at here? You look at 1 Timothy 2:3-7,
Mm-hmm.
Titus 1:7-9. You talk about 1 Timothy 3:8-12. It is so many different things that they bring forward as it relates to what's required of a
Yes.
spiritual leader.
Right.
And there's a lot of things related to morality, and
Mm-hmm.
character,
Wow.
and building and creating an environment where you can be trusted, and also where you can be respected, and you
Mm-hmm.
operate with integrity.
Yeah.
And you don't see that a lot. And because of that, people aren't so willing and so apt to submit
Well, they
to
may
these people in authority. They might obey you,
obey.
but that's only for a season. The minute they get out of your presence, or they're not
Yeah.
in your visible line of sight,
Mm-hmm.
they do something else because
Right.
they don't respect you.
Yep.
And not enough to be able to say, like, hey, whatever you say, this is what we're going to do. I remember back
Mhm.
in the day, you talk about church in particular, it's like whatever the pastor said, people did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to say all that was right,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just the level of trust and respect
Yeah.
that they had for their leader because of how a lot of them treated people.
Yeah.
From my experiences, like, say, they treated them truly like family.
Mhm.
They asked for their heart before they asked for their hand.
There you go.
They did things for them. They took care of them. They looked out for them. They operated with integrity.
Yeah.
They could be trusted. They were respectable in how they dealt with people, both in and out of the assembly. So
Yeah.
they built up enough of an emotional equity that people would be willing to submit, and they had
Mhm.
successes. They had wins.
Yeah.
Same way we talk about marriage. Like, say, if your husband, the man, the authority, if you losing all the time, anybody would trust you.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're right.
It's hard to trust you. I mean,
Yeah.
if every time we making major decisions, or we're doing something that requires a major step, and we keep tripping, it's like
Like,
it's make it real hard for me to
Ooh,
submit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially if I had an idea
Mm-hmm.
and I brought that to you and you rejected it
Yeah. Every time.
without providing any context, without providing any helping me understand, not helping me understand your own reasoning or anything, but you just flat out rejected it because you didn't want to do it because you didn't think of it.
See.
But yet you want me to submit to you.
Oh my goodness.
Now let's move on aside a little bit. So when you talk about like the ultimate, and we say God is the one that we're supposed to submit to, think about what He's done for us. Think about how He stepped up to the plate to make sure that there should be no doubt in our minds that we can trust Him,
Mm-hmm.
that He loves us,
Yes.
that He is selfless.
Yes.
He operates with integrity at every single level,
Oh yeah.
and that He is always doing what's in our best interest for us.
Right.
And it's all throughout the Bible. Everything that He's done, everything that He gave was to show and to demonstrate to us that you can submit to my authority and trust that you won't have to worry about anything.
Right.
You will be safe. You will be secure. This relationship it can grow, it can blossom, it can operate from a place of love. There is no hate involved. I love
Mm-mm.
you. I want to take care of you. I want what's best for you. I want you to shine. I want you to be your best version of yourself, as we say. And we can't always say that we see that. We start dealing with these other ordained authorities. A lot of
Right.
times it's like, how you going to help me get to my point where I get to shine?
Right.
And that's the part that's unfortunate, because as the authority, it's quite the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
We should be doing everything that we can to make sure that we put the position people under our care in positions to be as successful as they can be.
Yeah.
And when they see that that's truly your heart and that's your desire, and not
Mm-hmm.
just your heart and desire, but your actions line up with that, yeah, they'll submit to your authority.
Yeah. I mean, we could even use examples like we have good examples. And then some people like those Jim Jones kind of people,
Psycho. Yeah.
and those people they drunk the Kool-Aid. I mean, it's just that you got you could be so good at it that
Yeah.
people will submit and they yield everything.
Absolutely.
So you make sure you got the right
That's
right.
why I say don't turn your brain off. Always
Right,
keep it
like
on.
that
Always
higher
compare
power,
it against
like
the word.
there it is. Like, okay, this
what,
something ain't right.
what does God say? And if
So
God says something different, you be like, well, I'm not
I
going to
didn't
do that.
But just like just just the topic of submission is like it is freeing,
Mm-hmm.
but not so free to where you don't think.
Correct.
Like you're not a zombie or just a machine. You push a button, just do whatever. But you're a thinking person,
Absolutely.
and you have feelings, and you have intuitions and discernment and different things that relationships that help build the eagerness to yield, the willingness to submit to you.
Yeah. Because those very things you just mentioned,
Yeah.
if I'm the person in authority and I'm
Mhm.
setting the right environment,
Mhm.
you be eager to share your thoughts, your
Yeah.
feelings, your opinions, your intuitions, and all those different things that you have with me, because you know that I'm a safe space for you.
Right.
If you put that into my care, if you put that in my ear, and we're discussing that, you know that I'm not going to kill it,
Right.
but I'm actually going to help you stretch it. I'm going to help you grow it. And if I do, show you a different side of it, it's for your benefit and it's for your well-being. And that's
Right.
that's that trust part.
Yeah.
Just as much as I want you to trust me, well, how to put, yeah, I trust you. You want to trust me, and we're supposed to trust you. Yeah, that. Got lost in my thought.
See, now you see how I feel all
That
the
trust
time.
has to be mutual. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, maybe how do I say that?
Right.
But it has to be mutual. And when you have that environment, that's what makes it so fruitful. That's what makes it so successful.
Mhm.
But when you have it where I'm just kind of dragging along and I'll do what you say, only as much as as little as I possibly can, and
Yeah.
it's like that's not an environment where we're going to thrive.
Exactly.
Because true enough, the people that are the submittees they really do help the person in authority thrive.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
as much as the person in authority should be helping the people that are submitted unto them thrive. So
Mhm.
it is truly a mutual relationship and beneficial relationship if we do this thing the right way.
Exactly.
So it is no longer the S word, in a negative context, but it really is something that you can look forward to.
Mhm.
But it has to be two parties
Yeah.
working together.
Yes.
It can't be one trying to dominate the other. It's not
Mhm.
us both trying to be the ones in authority,
Right.
because that's not how God made it. Now, there may be a time and
Yes.
a place and a space where the roles might shift,
Right.
where I might be in authority and you might be the one that's under submission, or vice versa.
Mhm.
But because we know how to submit ourselves one to another, and because we are humble,
Mhm.
we're able to pull on and put off the hats as needed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, because like I say, 1 minute you might be the one in charge, and the next
Yeah.
minute,
I mean, just like you go to work, you're the boss.
absolutely.
You go to church, you might be an elder. You run your house, but there might be you have to work under somebody. Or you have to follow the leading of someone. You're under a
Absolutely.
pastor. There's different in different areas of your life. You may be the one in authority, or you may be the one that's submitting to authority.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the reasons why, as a sidebar, it's challenging sometimes when you talk about women in authority.
Mm-hmm.
Is because it's the being able to take off that hat
Mm-hmm.
in the appropriate context. Sometimes don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like say you want to keep that hat on because it makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel, like I'm equal.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't nobody saying you're not. But in this particular context, as God has designed it, you're the submittee.
Mm-hmm.
And the power that you demonstrate is being able to humble yourself and submit to the authority of the person that you're married to in this particular case.
Right.
And that's powerful.
Yeah, it keeps us honest.
Yeah, and the Bible talks about that. I think in 1 Peter, where it talks about the wives being able to win their husbands over because of their chaste conversation. Now, it goes into not with this, that, and the other, and we sometimes get stuck on the appearance part, but that's not the part he's speaking to, really.
Right.
He's speaking to, if you're going to really put time and energy and effort into anything, as a woman, as a wife, you should be putting it into having a meek and a quiet spirit, something that truly is of great value to God, because it's something that can endear you to your companion.
Right.
And it also could be the thing that causes him to convert. Because because of your chaste conversation and how you carry yourself and how you demonstrate respect for him and to him, that could win him over if he's a non-believer.
Right.
And then if he's a believer, like, because of how you handle and how you deal with your companion, that causes him to be respected, but it also causes you to be respected.
Right.
And I think that's something that's just getting lost these days.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, 'cause everybody want to be in charge. Everybody want to be making these decisions until things don't go right.
Right.
Then, hey, you the one in charge. You're supposed to be the man. It's like, but you went above and you overrode my authority and did what you wanted to do. But now you want me to come fix it.
Yeah.
But as the authority, because I love you, because I care about you, because I value the relationship, I still come in and I try to fix it.
Yeah, I think when you realize the responsibility leadership has, and what the outcome of your choices and decisions can bring, you might want to think twice before you want to just sit in that seat.
Absolutely.
It's not if it ain't for you, don't get in it.
Yeah, because there is a responsibility to the person in authority, and it's greater. That's the part that, again, we sometimes throw it aside. It's like, well, I'm in charge now, but go back and look at what you have to do. Go look at the example that you have to set. Go look at the environment that you have to create.
Right.
Go look at how you really are supposed to behave yourself as the one in authority.
Yeah.
And then come back and tell me how excited you are.
Yeah. And you got to remember you have to submit. We all have to submit to
Absolutely.
God. So it's like you may be in charge, but you're not the one ultimate.
God is the final authority.
Right. So calm down. Just remember that.
Yep.
I got a point I want to read.
Sure.
It says, if our purpose on this earth is to do the will of God, then submitting to someone else becomes an act of trust in God. We naturally look out for our best interest. But if we trust God to take care of us, then we are free to take care of others. So once again, putting our trust in God, it's just a freeing thing, and submitting to just understanding our purpose. It's a freeing thing. It shouldn't be a burden.
True. Yep. I think we're hitting the end of it right now. So just to recap, talking about the S word. As we've come to find out, yes, it does have some of the traditional tenets to it, but there's a lot of beauty in this word called submission.
Right.
If we do it the right way, both as being the submitter, but more importantly, even the authority. So we all have responsibilities in this thing called submission. And if we continue to work, each of us, on our part, we'll realize that it's something that really could bring forth some beautiful things.
My final point. The discipline of submission means having the willingness to voluntarily submit to Christ and others in authority. Thus, we make a commitment and resolve to yield our will, mind, and body for God's purposes, so we can better hear, receive, and obey His word.
Indeed. The S word.
Well, that's our time. Thank you so much for listening. We hope this episode has further enriched your perspective.
Until next time, I'm Mike.
And I'm Talisha. God bless.